I'm going to call the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee to order. On our agenda is the review and approval of the March 24th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next is the approval of the May 12th meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Boy, how did we get so behind on the minutes? Review and approval of September 8th meeting of this committee.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. And now we are to October 27th meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All the motions passed. Items 6 through 9 are for information. Does anyone have? Oh, I do. I have on 8. Marvin, I think you wanted to talk. And this is the call for innovators, request for proposals.
The reason I want to talk about this is I feel the city of Phoenix has not been upgrading the recycling. There's a lot of recycling out there that we're not doing that we could do to make the city more money. And I'll end my statement with that so we can get on with the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's something that we continue to work on all the time and are expanding the sources. Anyone on the committee have any questions on items 6 through 9? Okay, hearing none. We will go to item 10. John Trujillo. Look, John looks like Ginger.
Good morning, Madam Chair and subcommittee members. I'm here for John Trujillo today, Ginger Spencer, Assistant Public Works Director. We're here asking requests for recommendation for approval to City Council on 2 awards that were the result of our Reimagine Phoenix RFP. If you'll recall, these were the problem children items that were a part of our landfill. They basically are difficult to recycle. So I'll just run through a very quick presentation. Okay. Alrighty, so these were the things that we initially identified as hard to recycle, i.e. problem children. We came before you and we received proposals on for mattresses as well as food waste and at the time carpet and carpet foam. This was the original timeline, so we did receive proposals in April. We have basically, this was the proposal, the evaluation committee that we originally had with representatives from our partners at ASU, Republic Services, Community and Economic Development, as well as Water Services Department and Public Works. Again, part of the results. And so what we're here today is to talk about what our recommendation, staff's recommendation to move forward. So with mattresses, we are looking forward to enter into a contract with Goodwill to recycle our mattresses. We have about 56,000 mattresses that we process through our landfill each and every year. On a per mattress basis, it costs us $11 per mattress. These items are big and bulky, but 90% of what we find in our mattresses can actually be recycled. It's the steel springs, it's the foam, it is the fiber as well. So 90% of what we find in mattresses can be recycled. And right now, what's happening is we put them in our landfill. They do not deconstruct easily. They are basically there forever. They're also a public health issue, public nuisance with illegal dumping. Okay, let me go back to that one. So what we're recommending is to enter into a contract with Goodwill of Arizona And basically, they will be recycling our mattresses. It will be a cost at $7 per mattress, but then there will be a savings to the city of over $200,000. And by entering into this contract with Goodwill, we're going to be creating 20 to 25 jobs through this contract, through the term. Next, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you have a question? Go ahead.
I have a question. It's more of a health issue regarding the mattresses. And how do we determine what mattresses we recycle and what mattresses we don't? And the ones that aren't recycled, what do we do with them?
Right. So to your point, we are going to basically be taking mattresses that are not heavily soiled, that do not have bed bugs and that sort of thing. And so basically, the mattresses that don't meet that criteria, those will be the ones that will be sanitizing, recycling, deconstructing to turn it into new products.
Okay, that's what I wrote.
Okay, yes.
Oh, Councilwoman?
When we first heard this item, we said we hoped this would increase the amount of mattresses delivered to our facilities as opposed to illegal dumping. Can you speak a little bit about how we might hope that will happen?
Yes, so basically by having this program, we are encouraging recyclers to actually bring their mattresses to our transfer stations. We are also encouraging residents that they can bring and drop off their mattresses there as well. And then working with Goodwill, hoping that we can also partner with them so that mattresses that are delivered there are also being recycled. So that is our effort there. And it's basically just to get the word out. And you would be amazed at the number of businesses that come into our transfer station on a daily basis with mattresses just packed pile high. And we actually get excited. One day I was driving and I was like, okay, I can't take a picture, but we get a lot of mattresses coming through the transfer station, and now we're able to do something about it.
Thank you.
All righty. So the next category, we are looking to make an award to Recycled City. And this contract amount is, we want to start off at about $12,000. And that would be to do 3 city buildings, the Good Building, City Hall, and then Fire Station number 1. When we originally put this proposal out on the street, it was to do residential food waste pilot. But we said we should start at home, right? And learn from that as well as lead by example. And so we also did a quick comparison to see what it would cost if our city staff were also to provide this service. And so by actually going with Recycled City, we are going to be able to save money by doing so. And so about $40,000. So the recycled waste that we're going to take care of the food waste, Recycled City will come and pick it up twice a week from City Hall, Good Building, and Fire Station number 1. They have a product that's called Kabashi that you can actually sprinkle in the containers that will help with odors as well as gnats and that sort of thing. They'll pick it up twice a week, and then they'll take it to their facilities, and it will be used for community gardens. And then we'll be able to learn from this as well. That will help us when we are ready to move forward, but perhaps residential food waste recycling program in the future.
Do you have an estimated number of the volume? How much are you prepared to take and process?
Yes, so when we did our waste characterization study, we found that about 56,000 tons of food waste actually ends up in the landfill. So that's the estimate that we're working with. As far as the tonnage that we'll be able to divert through this pilot program, we're thinking it'll be about probably 20,000 tons of food waste to get us started.
20,000 tons?
I'm sorry. Thank you for the clarification. 20 tons of food waste. Sorry, I'm used to working with larger numbers. 20 tons of food waste through this program. The other thing I want to add is with this contract, we're starting off with 3 locations at $12,000, but it also includes for us to expand to $50,000 annually if we wanted to add additional locations.
And
Okay.
are you considering the airport as one of those potential locations?
So I'm glad you asked that. And we actually have a current partnership with the airport right now where we are picking up their food waste. So,
Thank you. Councilman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering what your timeline is. So this pilot program, like at what point do you feel you'll have enough data to make a determination as to, potential expansion of the program?
Yes. So if we receive approval today, we'll go forward to full council for approval in December, and then we hope to get the programs up and running within 30 days, so starting in January. And I would hope within, these are multi-year term contracts, I believe 3 years for each, but I would say from 6 months to 1 year, we hope to have some data to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, Councilwoman?
What is the educational process in the residential, well, it's not residential, it'll be the city. So how would we go about doing that?
Very good question. And as you know, we do need to do a lot more work with educating the public as well as our city employees about recycling. And particularly with this pilot food waste program, we will be doing presentations to various departments, and we've already started that, but we'll go and talk about this program that now exists. We'll have flyers also up in the break rooms, in the kitchenettes, so that's another way to promote this information. And then our staff, who currently does our diversion efforts, education efforts, will also work with Recycled City to help get that education out.
Thank you.
If we have no more questions, we do have a card. John Stoddard. John,
I was only going to speak if necessary.
do you think it's necessary? Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Motion?
I move to approve the authorization for the contract awards for transforming trash into resources.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. No, hearing no, Councilman Gates?
Sorry, Madam Chair, there's just one other piece of this that we didn't talk about, which is the carpeting and the carpet foam.
Yes.
So that was, you were expecting to move forward with that, but I guess there have been changes in the marketplace. Can you
Yes.
talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so we were looking to move forward with a contract with Planet Recycling to do recycling of carpet and carpet foam. As we were working through negotiations and moving these contracts forward, they recently reached out to us and said because of the change in the industry, they don't have the demand that they normally do. In fact, the carpet that they currently have in their warehouse, they were trying to get that out to resell it and to recycle it. So at this time, they're not in a position. You may recall that was going to be a contract at no cost to the city. They were going to basically come, pick up the carpet and carpet foam, recycle it, whatever they could use, and what they couldn't use, they would just return it to the city. So at this time, they're asking that we not move forward, but keep options open in case the market does change and there is a demand for that carpet and carpet foam, that they could come back to the city. And if so, we would come back to subcommittee and ask for your approval at that time.
And Madam Chair, had anyone else bid on that RFP?
Let's see. Councilman Gates, they were the only responsive proposal for that RFP.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, we have a motion to approve. A second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Brings us, thank you, to item 11, which is the Interstate 10, Interstate 17 Corridor Master Plan.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, as you know, a critically important component to the regional transportation system is the I-10 and I-17 corridor. And so here today is Ray Dovalina, our Street Transportation Director, and Bob Hazlett from the Maricopa Association of Governments to give an update to you on a master plan study that's been done, also known as a spine master plan by MAG. So I'll turn it over to Ray Dovalina to present to you an update on that work.
Thank you, Mario. Good morning, committee members and Chair Williams. Bob here, Bob Hassler from Maricopa Association of Governments is going to give you just an overview of what we're working with, all the collaboration we're doing with MAG and Arizona Department of Transportation and all the stakeholders that we're dealing with this project. So with that, I'll have Bob start it off.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. I think I made a presentation on this earlier this year when we kind of talked about some of the near-term improvements, some of the things that are going to be happening with the corridor. I was going to give you a brief update about that. And then the spine corridor master plan in and of itself is work that's underway. we're getting into what we call our alternatives phase, and we wanted to at least talk a little bit about what some of these thoughts and ideas are for I-10 and I-17 to get some thoughts and ideas back. And our whole goal is to have this corridor master plan completed by the end of this year, or end of next year, excuse me, December of 16. I'm already feel like I'm in 16 right now. Just to kind of start off with this near-term improvement strategy, work is still going on with that. Just as a refresher, I believe I presented this the last time, is that we're looking in the I-10 corridor around the Broadway curve, putting in what we call a collector-distributor system to try and get rid of some of the dangerous weaves that we have around the Broadway curve, and then also adding an extra lane in each direction all the way down to the Pecos Stack and Ahwatukee so that we can kind of uncork some of the traffic situations that we have down there. We also have identified 2 bike and ped multimodal overcrossings, if you will, at Guadalupe Road and also at Alameda Road to kind of help with non-motorized traffic so they can get back and forth across the corridor. And then on Interstate 17 itself, that east-west section down to the south of downtown, we're looking at putting in some what we call auxiliary lanes in between the traffic interchanges so we can help people enter and exit the freeway in a much more safer condition. And then you see at the very bottom there pictures of what we call active traffic management. It's putting in variable speed limits and stuff like that to try and calm down the traffic on Interstate 17 in particular and try and rescue back some of that capacity that we lose to what we call shock waves. This graph right here really kind of illustrates what they did in Australia. A lot of times, and the best way to explain this is as you're going down the highway, all of a sudden you see congestion up ahead, you're kind of tooling along at 65 miles an hour, you almost have to slam on the brakes, come to almost about 15, 20 miles an hour, and what happens there is that there's a shock wave that happens, and that causes a loss in capacity and the ability of the freeway to be able to carry more traffic. And so the idea that we have is to harmonize that a little bit better, try and reduce speeds ahead of congestion, and by doing something like that, we're able to rescue back some of the capacity that we have. Right now, an average freeway lane is supposed to carry 2,200 vehicles an hour. On I-17, we're only carrying 1,400 cars an hour. We need to try and figure a way that we can rescue back that 800 cars, and this will be a system that we think will do that. And so these 2 things are underway. The Arizona Department of Transportation has been underway with the studies for this, and we look to have this sometime under construction sometime in fiscal year 17 or fiscal year 18. So look for it coming down the pike. At the end of the last meeting that I presented at, we talked about the electronic way of how we went and took a look at getting people's responses on what to do with the entire 21-mile corridor known as the spine, which is the part of Interstate 10 from the split all the way down to Ahwatukee, and then I-17, the entire stretch of it all the way up to the North Stack at Loop 101. And we had talked about this spine.azmag.gov, where we were wanting people to be able to leave comments, and this whole thing called MetroQuest that you see right here allowed us to be able to reach out, and we received 1,800 responses back online. At the same time, we did public meetings where we went and actually met with people, and we had about 70 people show up there. But the vast number of folks said, do something with this corridor. Don't not do anything. And so this whole thing was very, very important to us. And so we presented this to our Transportation Policy Committee meeting at MAG and said, what are the alternatives? How should we develop these? What are some of the guiding principles? And the things that they came up with was to optimize. That's the very first thing that we said, is make use of what is available and to try and engage technology wherever possible. We've heard a lot of discussions about autonomous vehicles and all the different things that are coming down the pike. We're trying to make certain that the ability to be able to account for all that is in the pipeline, and that's how we would govern this master plan. The other thing is to expand, not necessarily expand the pavement, but expand the travel choices and the ability to have more folks to be able to do alternate travel modes. That was the next thing that was given to us. The next point is to make certain that it performs well. There are different travel markets. Not everybody drives this corridor from top to bottom. I mean, there are people that drive just bits and pieces of it. In fact, almost 40% of the freeway volumes are found on this corridor. But what we're doing is we're trying to make certain that we have a system that performs well and that we focus on system reliability, that people always know that it's going to take 30 to 40 minutes maybe to take that trip, that they have that reassurance instead of one day it's 15, the next day it's an hour and a half. And then the other thing is to figure out how we implement it, to make certain that we have a variety of travel options and that we bundle these things together and that it's done economically. Right now, there's still roughly about $1.1 billion program to improve the spine. We'd like to try and stretch those dollars as much as we possibly can and hopefully not have to worry about other things. And so We took that guidance, we met with about 60 of our other professionals, and we came up with 341 different possibilities of things that we can do. It's a lot. And we've had to take them and kind of divide them into these different things. Things that you can do throughout the entire system. We call those the backbones. We're keeping with our spine analogy here with a little bit of anatomy. And then segment-specific support, things that we can possibly look at. This whole active traffic management that I just showed you is probably going to be a big part of what we started taking a look at. But we've also looked at transit bed, bike and ped, as well as the possibility of direct HOV ramps to be able to provide more of those travel choices. We've also looked at just things that we can do physically in the corridor too, widening more managed lanes, fixing some of the traffic interchanges, but we've also looked at some specific areas at Camelback Road with some of the pending expansion plans of Grand Canyon University, trying to make certain that we accommodate for that. State Route 143, trying to make certain we have a better connection there, and then also to the freight connections. And then some of the things that we also had too, we don't know how far this is going to go in our studies, but we did look at maybe the possibility of maybe doing some relocation of parts of the freeway because we have some sensitive areas, particularly around Sky Harbor, that we want to be able to protect. And so maybe moving the freeway in different areas, those are some things that we're looking at. And so again, we have these 341 possibilities. Actually, we have 341 to 341st power of possibilities, which if you put that into a calculator, it goes into overflow. And so we're right now trying to wrap all these things together here to try and figure out what makes the most sense for this. So anyway, our study schedule, as I stated, we're still planning to have this corridor master plan done by the 1st of 2017 or December of 16. We're right now in the phase now of developing the alternatives and working towards a public meeting sometime in the early spring. And at the same time, we are going to report back to our Transportation Policy Committee probably a little bit more frequently than April of 2016 just to keep them engaged because that has certainly helped us in terms of moving forward this. And like I said, we're going to try and complete the project by December of 16. So, Madam Chair, that completes my, my report, and I appreciate any comments or questions.
I have a question on, when you showed, I need to understand how setting a speed on electronic boards helps the flow. I mean, I'm on that thing every morning. I understand the problem.
It's a big parking lot.
I just don't understand the solution.
Yeah, let me head back to that slide that shows the big breakdown and everything. This was done again in Melbourne, Australia, and the freeway corridor that they put this on is really no different than I-17. The only difference is they drive on the left, we drive on the right. I mean, that's the only difference.
Well, I'm not sure that's that big a difference.
Some people think it is, but you know. But what they have found is that when you're driving along at 65 miles an hour and you see congestion ahead that may have been caused by an incident or something, and people have to slam on their brakes, it creates what we call a shock wave, and that spreads all the way back to the corridor, and you get what we call unstable flow that stretches back for miles on end. And so what we're trying to do is that through the use of things like variable speeds, and you can see the example of this that's in Seattle, Washington right now, that if we can kind of start to regulate the traffic before it even gets to the incident, you won't have traffic having to stop, go all the way stop to an all the way stop condition, that maybe they might be able to slow down to maybe about 30 or 35 miles an hour. It keeps the traffic moving instead of being in a stop condition. And so by doing that, you're kind of smoothing out the flow, and you're able to get more folks to be able to use that corridor.
Okay, I think I have it. So if there's an accident or something that is stopped here, and I'm up on Greenway, and I'm coming, and you're going to flash that I can only go 45 miles an hour, that'll maintain a constant flow at a reduced speed, so we shouldn't have the shock.
Yeah, and you don't have to
Got it.
come to a complete stop. And the comments that we've heard through public meetings and time again, we've heard from folks that they say, we don't mind that we have to slow down. We just don't like to stop and start, stop and start, stop and start. And this is where we're trying to get rid of that.
Thank you.
So will that assist on when you shut down the freeway from like Glendale to
The curve?
the curve? And how are we warned in advance?
Certainly. Madam Chair, Councilmember Pastor, yes, it does help with this because those speed signs that you see up there also have the ability to actually close lanes down so that you can get people into the right lane so they can get around the incident. But the other part of this whole system also includes a whole host of other signing information that's gotten out to folks that says that, hey, if we have a closure up ahead, don't even enter the freeway. You know, that's what's also included in a lot of this. So we're trying our best to get that information out there so that, you know, there are other routes that folks can take.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gallego?
So one of my favorite parts of this is the auxiliary lanes between 16th Street and 19th Avenue. And right now, we have a lot of development going on where we would be putting those lanes. And my understanding is we as a city can't do anything about that until ADOT says they want to move forward. So it seems like it's only adding costs, and apparently you don't have enough money to begin with.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Gallego, the costs are actually in there for Interstate 17. We're doing our best to try and move these things forward as fast as we possibly can. We've been doing a lot of research through our cash flow that we have for the entire regional freeway and highway program. We're starting to find some extra money, what we call on the couch cushions. It's a pretty big couch. And we're finding out that we're able to probably get these things going as quickly as FY17 or FY18 is what we're working for. The other thing that we're also asking ADOT to do is to look at where the intersections are with the ramps that actually feed onto the freeways so that we can make certain that we have the best possible configurations for those interchanges as well, or intersections, so that people can, I know 19th Avenue, for example, northbound is backed up every morning trying to make that right to get onto I-17. We're asking ADOT to look at that and see, are there some other things that we can do there to kind of help with that and minimize that congestion out on the 19th Avenue.
That would be so fabulous and wonderful news. But right now, Enterprise Rental Car is building a facility on what was a farm at that intersection where we'd be putting the auxiliary lanes. And so,
the other part about this too is all those auxiliary lanes, we're keeping them inside of ADOT right-of-way. So hopefully they don't have to take any land or anything like that. So everything is staying within the rights-of-way as best as possible so that that construction can continue.
wonderful. And we, as you look for money in the seat cushions, I think we as a Phoenix City Council certainly hope as we build the 202 freeway, if there's any money that, if that comes in under budget, that money will stay in our community because we have a long list of needs.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Gallego, absolutely. We're working on that as best as we can, and we know that your list is very long, and we want to work with that list as much as we can and get as much of this stuff constructed, because the more we can get constructed, the more people work, and the better things can be.
Later in this meeting, we were talking about stormwater management and the I-17 corridor in the northern part of our city. Certainly, there's some funding needs in that area as well. Any words of wisdom for us as we?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Gallego, I think the biggest part about I-17 and the stormwater part of this has always been a big, I don't want to say conundrum. It's been an issue that we've had to tackle, and we are trying to make certain that that we do address the stormwater needs, because we know that there are some parts of 17 where the drainage is a little bit inadequate, shall we say? And I think we want to make certain that whatever is proposed, that it will address those needs as best as possible, because the last thing you need is for a flooded road and nobody can use it. So we're working with ADOT. We're also working with City of Phoenix here to make certain that the best solution is identified and that we get this stormwater situation straightened out, because 17 in particular is one of the corridors that we need to look at very closely.
Wonderful. Could you go back to the slide with 341 possibilities?
Okay.
So several of us also serve on the Downtown Aviation Subcommittee, and we're doing land use around the airport right now. And so maybe if you could speak in a little bit more detail about freeway relocation and the freight connection.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Gallego, yeah, the split interchange where I-10 and I-17 come together on the southeast side of downtown is in some areas where we are experiencing some issues with some of the airspaces for that very south runway, the east-west runway that's down there. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out anything that we do in that corridor. Right now, if we do anything in that split interchange, it's kind of if you break it, you buy it, meaning that if we do anything, we have to kind of relocate to get out of those airspaces. And so we're right now trying to figure out what's the best things that we can do there, that if we have to do any type of relocation, that it's done in such a way that we don't impact a lot of folks, but at the same time, too, we want to make certain that we protect whatever we can at Sky Harbor, because that's the economic engine of a big part of the valley. And so we're looking at different options that we can do to try to avoid those airspaces wherever we possibly can. We've got FAA. We've been working with them to make certain that we have a clear understanding of what these are. The issue that we always have is that FAA is always changing their minds on the different things, and we're trying our best to try and get the best knowledge that we can from them, because we don't want to be in a situation of proposing something and find out, oh, well, we can't build it, or oh, we have to move this because we're in a tight airspace. Keeping that runway open is extremely important, not only for the valley, but it's also for the entire air system, because if you close down a runway or anything like that, it affects the entire system throughout the entire country, because of how planes land and all that type of stuff. And so we're doing our best right now to work with our friends at Phoenix Aviation, but also with FAA, to make certain that we get the best possible design in that particular area. That interchange is in a very tough spot. And we also have a big drainage tunnel that's underneath it too. So it's like we got issues not just above it, but we also have issues below it. And so we're trying to figure out the best possible solution.
Good luck.
Thank you.
If you can get FAA to change their
FAA,
mind
yeah.
on anything, though, we,
Council member, I don't know that can happen, but we'll do our best.
wonderful.
Did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you very much, Councilman Gallego, for raising the stormwater issues on I-17. As Councilwoman Williams knows, that's every time it rains, we've got issues up there, Greenway, Peoria, Cactus. So we would appreciate your focus on that, and as well on the traffic interchange fixes. That's a huge issue in the evenings, Peoria, Cactus, etc. up there. I mean, these backups are just unreal. So to the extent that you can make improvements there, that's going to make a big impact. Obviously helping to regulate the flow on I-17, but also people trying to get it. We've got a large employment center there in the Metro Center area, and so that will certainly improve the quality of life and get our residents home quicker. So thank you very much. Real interesting presentation, and look forward to the opportunity for our constituents to give further input on this.
Thank you.
Do you have any comment?
No, I don't.
I believe, Marvin, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. Can you turn on my mic, please?
You're on.
You're on.
Okay. I have several questions. As you know, I've brought it up many times at MAG. We have a big problem on Interstate 10 from the 101 on the west side down to downtown. What has happened is that a normal 12 to 14 minute ride in the morning takes 45 to 50 minutes. And I ride that all the time, and it hasn't changed in years. As you know, I recommended, and we spoke about several times, about a second HOV lane on I-10, which would be a toll road, which most people think, oh no, we don't want to pay tolls. But when they stop and think that they can do several things, one, it saves them time, which is money to them personally. It saves them time and pollution by having a toll road, which they can make downtown in 15 to 20 minutes instead of 45 minutes. And it also saves pollution. So I'm still waiting to hear whether or not we can get a second HOV lane, which has been done in other cities like Dallas. And initially in Dallas, they were against it, and now they praise it. So if you have any new answers, please let me know.
Thank you. I don't see any answers coming forth this moment.
I think the only thing that we can respond to, and we've talked at MAG a number of times about the I-10 Papago Freeway between Loop 101 and downtown Phoenix, and that's my commute route too. So I'm very familiar with what he talks about. There is a very wide median that's out there, and there is the opportunity to probably consider a second HOV lane. However, at this time, I think the big focus has been is that that's where the South Mountain is going to intersect in kind of in the middle of that corridor, and I think we're wanting to try to figure out how that final design happens before even considering any other lanes along Interstate 10, because again, we might be getting too many things out in front of the horse, or the cart in front of the horse, if you will, if we don't look at that. And one other thing that we also continue to plan for is there's another parallel freeway facility called the I-10 Reliever Freeway. It's Arizona State Route 30. That's roughly about 6 miles to the south right there, and we continue to plan for that. And hopefully that'll be, it's going to be some time before that gets constructed, but again, that's another corridor that we're looking at to kind of help with the relief along the Papago, because that is a very tough corridor, and it's the only thing that's out there to get from the West Valley into downtown.
Madam Chair, just to add also, we also have the I-10 West Capitol, the I-10 West light rail.
Light rail,
that's
yes.
extending towards the west along the I-10 as well. So we have other elements that are moving forward. Again, I think it's a topic that we're going to continue working with MAG. I think MAG has done a lot of research on that, on these hot lanes and potential managed lanes along all the different freeways in the valley. So I think we're going to still have that conversation moving on. So.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? I am glad that you came today. Thank you very much, and we appreciate the update. We look forward to hearing from you probably 6 to 8 months from now on what's being implemented. I know that we have had the spine study, and it seems like it's been going on forever. It probably hasn't been, but
Some days.
some days it does, yeah. But I'm anxious to see some of these improvements made. It's only going to get worse, not better. And so as quickly as we can move forward, I think that's extremely important. And I thank you for your efforts. And thank you, Ray.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next item is Tom Remus for our federal agenda. That time of year again.
That time of year. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Tom Remus. I'm with the Office of Government Relations. Joining me today is James Orlowski, who oversees our federal program, and John Wayne Gonzalez, who oversees our state program. Today we're before the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee seeking input on the transportation, water, and environment portion of our state and federal agendas. Each year we go out, we meet with city departments asking for their input of issues to include, and we also work with each of the council offices and meet with you and your teams to talk about your priorities. Last year we started the process where we would come before subcommittees to receive additional input. We are planning on going before the City Council policy agenda on December 8th, and at that time we'll bring all the input together into 2 separate reports, one for state, one for federal. One item that you're familiar with each year is we talk about our guiding principles, both on the state level and the federal level. On the state level, we always try to make sure that we're not shifting, having new issues shift to the city from the state without any funding to go along with it. We also want to make sure that we're protecting the ability of the mayor and council to set policy at a local level. And always important to us is protecting shared revenues. As you know, that's about $34 million, or 34% of our general fund here at the City of Phoenix. So we always want to make sure that those funds stay secure for all of us. An item on the state side that was added last year was protecting water resources. As you remember, there was a large discussion that took place at a policy session with the water department talking about protecting all of our water resources. So what we've done in this year's state agenda is we've included some specific items to put a little bit more direction on that for you as well. On the federal level, our guiding principles are twofold. It's promoting fiscal sustainability, and that goes back to making sure that we're out there talking about a fair share of federal funds for Phoenix. As you've heard from us before, at the federal level, a lot of times the federal formulas might be a bit skewed to those older East Coast cities, and so western growing cities like the City of Phoenix aren't perhaps getting their fair share. Secondly is, once again, protecting local authority and making sure that there aren't any unfunded mandates coming down from the federal government. With that, I will turn it over to John Wayne Gonzalez to talk about those items that we're looking for input on at the state level. John?
First item on the state agenda in your report is supporting an increase in the highway revenue user funds. HERF is the short term for it. Those are monies that come from different sources, primarily from the gas tax, that are then routed back to local communities to help pay for infrastructure, whether it's building new roads or maintaining roads. And several years ago, there was an increase to the HERF revenue funds. The potential is there for an increase in this year's budget. So in 15, there was a total allocation of $1.2 billion, and Phoenix's share of that was $111 million. So staff would appreciate the support to go down to the legislature and advocate for more of those dollars for Phoenix.
Councilman Gates?
And just a clarification on this, you're not suggesting a tax increase necessarily, just that more of the general fund go towards HERF?
Madam Chair, Councilman Gates, that's correct. Right now, there is a formula in place of the different entities that receive these dollars. Primarily, a lot of these dollars are being shifted to support the Department of Public Safety, where some of these dollars are taken away from local governments. However, a couple years ago, they did increase HER funds out of the general fund, so the money was there. They decided to dedicate more to it to the HER fund. So the potential is there this year with at the state. So we would like to advocate for those dollars if at all possible.
Thank you.
And another issue, as Mr. Remus talked about, dealing with water issues. The next few slides deal with that. Right now, as we all know, Arizona is in a position where we're dealing with California and other states on water resources on the Colorado River. So the Department of Water Resources, which is the lead entity in these discussions on behalf of the state, is very critical, very important to make sure that we protect our water resources on the river. That being said, as we've put before, we support the funding for Department of Water Resources, adequate funding to make sure that they're able to carry forth their mission in order to protect those water resources in Arizona. This fiscal year, they received $12.8 million out of the general fund for operations. It looks like the director has put in the same request. So staff recommends supporting the director's request for the same amount of dollars and resources so that they can do their jobs adequately. And then in the area of the Water Quality Assurance Revolving Fund, there are sites around the state that have contaminated groundwater and soil that have been identified. Phoenix has 17 of those sites. And so there are monies that are set aside in the state budget to help pay for some of the cleanup costs. One of the things that has come up over the summer is that there are cities and other entities that are concerned that we're not getting the full amount of monies we're supposed to get. In statute, we're supposed to get $18 million a year, but if you look at the last 5 years, we've been only receiving $10 million in that fund. So we understand that the Director of Department of Environmental Quality is asking for $12 million in this year's budget out of the general fund. And so AMWA, the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, as well as a lot of other municipalities and some private sector interests have been talking and very supportive of working together to see if we can get a little more money in that fund to help it speed up the cleanup at all these sites. And so staff would recommend supporting additional monies for that. And then the area of the Arizona Power Authority, the APA, this is an entity that's been in Arizona for decades. Really what it does is it helps manage a lot of the energy and the power that's coming off the Hoover Dam, making sure that it gets to the areas it needs to get to in the state of Arizona. Well, that entity is going to sunset next year. And so there was a legislative committee that already met this summer, and they recommend extending it for another 8 years. It's an important entity to make sure that power that is coming off the Hoover Dam via the Western Area Power Authority, which is the federal version of the state version of the APA, we just want to make sure that it's in existence. There are potential agreements in place that can begin in 2017 where the city of Phoenix can actually benefit in lowering some of its power costs. Basically excess energy off the Hoover Dam. Once that's calculated, it's then divvied up among some of the entities that benefit from it. And so in our conservative estimate, if this entity were to continue to exist and those plans went into place starting in 2017, the city of Phoenix could see a conservative amount of $80,000 a year in savings when it comes to power, just for the city entity. And that contract is supposed to be about 50 years. So there's savings there for the city of Phoenix. And so staff would like to support the extension of the Arizona Power Authority for those reasons.
Darlene, why would you only recommend extending it for that period of time?
Madam Chair, what happens is that the legislature has committees that they look at all the different entities and agencies. They all pretty much have a sunset date. When they met this summer, the committee recommended a bill go forward to extend it for another 8 years. So that's a recommendation that comes out of that legislative committee. It's not uncommon. We even have big agencies like Department of Transportation, Department of Water Resources that get extended 5 years, 10 years, even though you know that they are going to be important for decades to come. But that's just the nature of the legislative process. So 8 years was the recommendation from the legislative committee.
Thank you.
And finally, in the area of in water resources, actually 2 more items up, but this one, support protection of groundwater. So as Mr. Remus mentioned, there were some items that the council clearly adopted in its policy meetings about 1.5 years ago, and we supported that in legislative agenda last year. So there's an area dealing with making sure that everything that the city's doing, staff is doing, to try to work with the development of enhanced aquifer management concepts, making sure they're developed, making sure that the negotiations, discussions can continue to go on with the different entities, and if there's potential legislation to be able to support of that. So that's another issue that we're just advancing again that's already come before the council to seek continuing support for those efforts. And there's going to be an effort made to support efforts to clean up the state water code. There are many portions of the state water code that were struck down by the Supreme Court in the 80s. However, it was never cleaned up, and it's still in the statute. So if you're still working with drafting legislation or implementing policy, there are times confusion because those laws are still on the books, even though they're unconstitutional. The Kyle Center for Water Policy at the Morrison Institute at Arizona State University, in conjunction with a lot of other entities, whether it's Salt River Project, Arizona Public Service, a lot of municipalities and water entities, are looking at trying to work together in a collaborative way to go in and get those statutes cleaned up. And so staff would like to be able to work with all those entities, that first step of their policy mission, and to try to go in and take a step at trying to clean those laws or scrub the books from those laws that are unconstitutional. And that is the state portion.
So, Madam Chair, before we move into the federal, is there any input that you'd like or any direction that you'd like to give us so that we move forward with our complete package on December 8th? Items that we might have missed or other direction you'd like us to take?
Councilwoman?
Thank you for your hard work on this, and it really is exciting that we've added water to our guiding principles. I think that shows responsible planning in advance for something that is so important to our community. In this committee, we've had some very eye-opening reports about our infrastructure, including poor grades from the American Society for Civil Engineers, and we have a stormwater report at the end of this meeting that might as well be sponsored by Ambien because it's going to keep us all up late at night. So we really do need more funding in this area, and I think it's important. I've heard that Senator Worsley is going to be leading conversations on infrastructure funding, and I hope that we'll be involved in those because we have broad needs across our community, and almost every report in this packet today really emphasizes that. So I think we want to be involved in that. And the Department of Emergency Management receives some money for infrastructure, and I think we need to be at that table as well because we want to make sure we get our fair share, including the money they get on an annual basis, but also the money they have this year as a result of the presidential emergency declaration. And also, as the state moves forward, I understand we don't have any funding for rail between Tucson and the Phoenix area, but I think it's important that the city be very involved in those conversations. It seems like there is a lot going on in that general area, and we believe they will connect in with the airport area and our metro light rail system, with the report from ADOT about possible studies in that area as well. It's a lot of moving pieces, and I think it should be a priority that we be at that table and make it a priority of the city. So I would love to include that in our agenda as well.
Comment?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Gallego, thank you for that. We have made note of it, and we will formulate that to put forward.
I know you were talking about water, but to follow up on her comments, the fact that the heavy rail is being considered between Phoenix and Tucson and the route it will take, I'd like to see a further discussion on that because since I serve on the Gateway, Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport Authority, there's so much discussion if that airport is to ever grow and become a real Sky Harbor reliever. There needs to be quick transportation between Sky Harbor and that facility so that people can change, have the interchange and the connecting flights. So I would like to see what the potential is for perhaps the routing of this heavy rail, if that is even a solution. I don't know how fast everybody expects it to move, if it's truly rapid or not. But I would like to have that brought back forth. And as it goes forth at the state level or the federal level, I would really appreciate keeping this committee informed.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, at your request, Chairwoman Williams, we did add an item to the future agenda for December 8th to have Arizona Department of Transportation attend and to give an update on passenger rail from Phoenix to Tucson, and that would give you an opportunity to provide that input and keep that conversation alive.
Good. And I just thought it was timely to let our reps know we are very interested in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I will turn this over to James Orlowski. James will walk through our federal agenda. As you know, the federal agenda is quite lengthy, so I think James will be hitting the high points, but by no means does it mean that nothing is less important than another. So if there's items that we don't bring up and you'd like to call out, please do. So with that, James.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and good morning, Councilman Williams and Mayor, members of the subcommittee. Like Tom mentioned, it's a pretty extensive federal agenda, and so what we attempted to do is break it out by the department. Like Tom had mentioned at the front of this presentation, we do reach out to the departments each year and ask for their proposals and ideas that they'd like to see move forward in our federal agenda, and so this is the result of what we got from those departments. In terms of our street transportation area, of course, at the top of the agenda is going to be the surface transportation reauthorization. That's currently working its way through Congress right now. The Senate had passed legislation that would extend surface transportation reauthorization called the DRIVE Act, and now the House is currently working on their own version of that legislation. And so we expect them to get together in conference committee and work out some of those differences. But of course, some of the overall principles that we'd like to see codified in that would be, number one, a longer-term reauthorization bill, somewhere in the ballpark of 4 to 6 years. The current legislation that we're working under, which is called MAP 21, was just a shorter bill. It was about 2 years, and it's been temporarily extended, but we'd like to see something longer in the 4 to 6 year range. What that would do is allow us to plan better for the future, make those policy decisions, and get funding in place. So it would just give staff a lot more certainty as they're moving forward. And so in addition to that, another item under the streets area is safe routes to schools. This is a new item in our agenda this year, and you can see a picture there in the PowerPoint presentation. I believe that's at 7th Avenue in Glen Rosa. It's one of the pieces of infrastructure that our street department has installed to allow for the safe passage of students walking to school. And what we're looking for with this item is currently under MAP 21. That money, it's called Transportation Alternative Program funding for safe routes to school. That currently flows to the Metropolitan Planning Organizations, which of course is MAG here in our region. And we really think that's a good and efficient way for that money to flow versus maybe flowing to the state or some other way. The City of Phoenix has been very fortunate and successfully pursued funding through MAG for some of these infrastructure improvements like you see there with a hot crossing. Finally, under streets, we also talk about leveraging local funds. So with Proposition 104 and the extension and expansion of the transportation tax, we'd like to look at ways to work with our federal partners, whether it's Congress or the administration, to take those local funds and leverage those to get more federal dollars. And so we'd like to kind of put our heads together with our federal partners and see if there's a way that we could look to leverage those local funds to get more federal funding.
I have a question.
Councilwoman?
Safe routes to
School.
local schools or something, safe routes
Mhm.
to schools.
Yes, ma'am.
How are they determined once there's funding? How are the safe routes determined? Who are going to receive the safe route?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And my understanding, and I might have to defer to our street transportation staff to get into more of the specifics, but essentially that funding currently, like I said, flows from the federal government to our MPO, which is MAG, and then we're able to, on a competitive basis, pursue that funding. And I see Eileen getting up here, and perhaps she can give more specifics about how they determine how that funding's utilized.
Yes, Councilwoman and Councilwoman Pastor as well. So the Safe Routes to School funding, it goes underneath the Transportation Alternatives Program, as James has already explained, and at MAG. And right now, we are actually in the competitive process to receive those. So MAG has set some policy guidance on how to measure and rank projects region-wide. So all of the cities and towns and tribal communities that are members of MAG, they submit project applications. And based on those different criterias, a lot of it is safety. Are you changing the way the roadway is looking, and or are you serving a school? Are you adding a sidewalk? Is there a lack of a sidewalk right now? Are you providing connectivity, a better walk route? Is it, again, safer? Those things then are evaluated through the application process based on the number of applications that come in. And regarding this current year, we submitted specifically 2 sidewalk improvements, one along near Mojave and Central Avenue to 5th Street, another one in the Mountain View Elementary School area. Those were all proposed sidewalk improvements, as well as we've requested funding in 2018, 19, and 20 for a series of hawks, I think 7, 6, and 4, all throughout the different years that, every one of those hawks that is proposed at those locations is actually adjacent to a school. And those right now are ranking very high. November 17th, City of Phoenix staff is going to present those applications. And then from there, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Technical Advisory Committee at MAG will move forward with their ranking of the projects region-wide.
To answer your question?
Yes, so it's obviously a number of items, but it all comes down into the safety and
Connectivity.
connectivity.
Correct.
And then 7, 6, and 4, I didn't understand that piece.
So the number of different hawks that we've submitted. So in 2018, the application we submitted had 6 locations of hawks. The 2019 applications had 7. The 2020 application has 4 locations. Again, they're all associated with schools.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. With that, we'll move to the Public Transit Department, and we have 2 main proposals that were submitted by our public transit staff. Of course, one is the Highway Transit, or the Highway Trust Fund, and you heard Tom and John Wayne earlier mention the HERF Fund, and that's not just a local or state issue, that's a national issue as well when you talk about some of the shortfalls with the Highway Trust Fund. There's a bit of a structural deficit there, and Congress in recent years has had to shore that up with transfers from the general fund, and so we're looking for them to continue to fund the Highway Trust Fund and actually increase the investment in our highway infrastructure. Additionally, we also talk about the alternative fuel tax credit, and that's a tax credit that the city in past years has been able to take advantage of, and it nets us somewhere in the savings area of $3.2 million, so it's a pretty significant savings that we're able to get by virtue of this tax credit. This is tied up in the broader tax extender package issue. This is just one of the tax credits that falls under that. And in past years, Congress has gone in and retroactively extended those tax credits. But we'd like them to do that, but also extend it prospectively, again, to allow for better planning and for us to take advantage of that tax credit. With that, we'll move from sort of the transportation and infrastructure side to water services, and the proposals that we received from the water department. Again, I think you'll see some similar themes to what we talked about on the state side, but Colorado River resiliency. I think, we're seeing some shortfalls and potential long-term issues with the Colorado River, and so we want to stay actively involved in discussions that are happening at the federal level with our partners, whether it's Department of Interior, Congress, and so forth, to make sure that Phoenix and Arizona are adequately represented in those discussions. Similarly, federal drought relief legislation. There is current legislation that's been proposed in the Senate by the senators from California, Senator Boxer and Senator Feinstein. And primarily our interest in that would be to make sure that as that discussion is occurring and that legislation could potentially be moving forward, that we represent Phoenix and the state and make sure that if consideration is given to California, which is obviously suffering some severe drought issues, that those benefits don't come at the expense of Phoenix and our water resources here locally.
I have a question for you, though. When it comes to negotiations on the Colorado River, I was told that Phoenix isn't actually at the table. So how do you manage to get a voice in what's going on?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We don't have a formal seat at the table, but what we do is we work with our partners, whether it's the Department of Water Resources, which is actively engaged, or some of those other entities. I know we've, in the past sent forward things that we'd like to see in legislation or those discussions to have considered. And you're correct, we don't have a formal seat at the table, but we do want to work closely with our partners to make sure that our interests are represented.
Madam Chair, as James mentioned, our partners are pretty expansive, and Catherine Sorensen and her water team have developed those strong relationships, whether it's with the state or with the Central Arizona Project or other stakeholders, to make sure that the Phoenix point of view is brought forward. We additionally use our resources in Washington, D.C. to share our thoughts and concerns with the delegation, with other interested parties, and with federal agencies. So while we might not have an actual seat at the table, we make sure that we extend our influence throughout the process.
So you're behind the scenes pushing all you can?
We try to do.
Good.
Yeah, and I would just note that our congressional delegation, specifically our senators, are very actively engaged in this issue. They've been phenomenally supportive, and so we look to provide input as they're looking at those issues as well.
Great.
And then finally, under water services, we talk about forest management and watershed restoration. And primarily our interest here is that when you have some of those devastating wildfires in the northern part of the state, we do derive a lot of our water resources from runoff and some of that water that sort of matriculates down to the central Arizona area. And so when you have some of those disastrous events, that can impact water resources. And so we want to make sure that there's adequate funding to the agencies that do forest firefighting, and things of that nature, just to make sure that we're protecting the watershed and the water that we get from there. And I would also, again, just add that our senators have been very active in this area. There's legislation called the Flame Act Amendment that they've been actively pursuing. And so that's an example of legislation that we would look to lend our support to as that's advancing through the legislative process. Additionally, we do have two proposals from the Parks and Recreation Department. These are two items that I'm sure you'll all recognize from previous federal legislative agendas, but we do talk about the Rio Salado Oeste, which is an ecosystem restoration project. I'm sure you're all aware that we finished up the Rio Salado project, which was a huge multi-year, hundreds of millions of dollars project. And so Rio Salado Oeste would really sort of be the next phase of that project and to continue that ecosystem restoration project. And so we're specifically looking for about $1.5 million. We would look to get that included in the President's budget through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for basically design and pre-engineering work to move that project forward. And again, this would be a multi-year effort, but we just want to keep that alive by getting funding to it to continue that. We also talk about the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and you're also probably aware that Phoenix has been able to get a lot of funding from this program in the past for Sonoran Preserve acquisition, as well as park enhancements in the inner city. And so we're at a point now where the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the authorization is actually expired, and so we'd like to see that reauthorized, obviously, and to continue to pursue those funding opportunities through the LWCF.
Councilman?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. And just on the point of Rio Salado, I just want to underline, I think I may have mentioned it to you before. I know on at least two occasions, Senator McCain has mentioned to me, I know he's mentioned the mayor as well, that Rio Salado is a real focus for him. So let's make sure that we're taking him up on that offer and being a real cheerleader for us on that. I think his vision may be even bigger than this, but this is certainly a great start in that direction.
Thank you.
In the area of our Office of Environmental Programs, we have a handful of priorities that are in our agenda every year, from ozone air quality standard and monitoring that. Brownfields redevelopment program, we've been successful at getting federal grant funding through that initiative to benefit the brownfields here in the Phoenix area. We just recently got some funding, and so we'd like to continue to pursue that to benefit those areas that have, some sort of environmental contamination, and sort of repurposing that land and making it useful and vibrant again. And then also the Endangered Species Act, and just sort of monitoring that if there are new species being listed, or if there could be impacts to some of those ecosystem restoration projects like Tres Rios or Rio Salado. We just want to keep our eye on the Federal Register and make sure that we're apprised of what's happening in those areas. We also talk about two new items, one being the local food system. And we talk more about that in the report, but basically what we're talking about is dealing with food deserts and making sure that all of our community has access to fresh food, and that it's not that we're not experiencing sort of those islands where members of our community, perhaps in poor areas, don't have access to fresh food. Finally, there is an item about environmental justice also, and sort of in the same vein, it's just sort of talking about making sure that certain parts of our community aren't unduly or disparately impacted by some of the severe weather or environmental events that we may have. And on that item, I did just also want to note that we did receive some feedback about our staff recommendation in the report, and so I just wanted to read off a change to that recommendation, and we'd love to get your support of that. So on the environmental justice item, we'd like to change our staff recommendation to read as follows, which is staff recommends taking a proactive approach to identifying potential disparate impacts of future projects and continued growth, including seeking input from those potentially affected by new and existing projects. And then additionally, staff also recommends exploring potential federal and foundation funding opportunities that will allow the city to improve capacity building. And again, we'd like your support to basically look for those funding opportunities at the federal or foundation level to sort of move the cause of environmental justice forward to make sure that our community is not unduly impacted by some of these events.
Councilman Gates?
Madam Chair, I had recommended that language, so of course I'm supportive, but I think it hopefully that better reflects the reality of what's going on and the focus that we'd like to take, or at least I would like to take on this particular item. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Councilman Gates, for that. I appreciate it.
No, I think it sounds like a very good suggestion. Thank you.
And then finally, the last slide that we have for you is in our sustainability area. We did receive 3 proposals for items to move forward into our federal agenda, including climate resiliency. Again, talking about when you think about some of the disastrous flooding events that we had in August and September of 2014, and sort of how do we position ourselves as a city to be more resilient when it comes to those sorts of events. And I think not just be sort of reactive in those cases, but to plan ahead and to put ourselves in a position where we're more resilient in dealing with those events. Additionally, electric vehicle or EV infrastructure, talking about looking for those federal funding opportunities, maybe through the Department of Energy, to basically accelerate the adoption of electric vehicle infrastructure in the Valley. And so we would look for funding opportunities to do that. And then finally, with renewable energy, obviously the city, I think, has a really excellent record when it comes to renewable energy. And so we would look to continue that record and looking for those federal funding opportunities to increase our use of renewable energy, which obviously has a cost savings to the city. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Tom.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, that's what we have for your input today. Again, if there's something that we have missed, something that you need more definition on, we still have a number of weeks before this comes to the policy committee, and we're open to meeting with you and your team to discuss further. Or if there's something today that you'd like to share, we're ready to take notes.
Councilwoman?
I think it's also nice that we take a moment to reflect on the successes of the past year. We moved significantly forward on healthy forests. We got a major capital grant from Tiger, which we had not done before, although did we get a wonderful planning grant the year before, so significant influx of money into our community as a result of our federal work, and we were the only Ladders of Opportunity Transportation Project west of the Mississippi. So congratulations to everyone involved. It's been quite an impressive year.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Gallego, thank you for that. I think that our team, state and federal, and the grants portion have done a great job working with the city departments. And I think we are proud of the efforts that have been made this year. So thank you for pointing those out.
I do have a question on the comment here on page 66 on the city also intends to apply for an upcoming grant opportunity for the funding of a chief resiliency officer. I'm wondering, I mean, we passed something, last month at council on getting volunteers. We have a staff already working on a plan, plus we have a sustainable officer who is involved. Are we combining all this? Is it going to be brought under one person? I just think it's, if we have three going forward, I think that's redundancy and not the most efficient way, nor will it result in the best efforts.
Madam Chairwoman Karen Peters, and with regard to the Chief Resiliency Officer opportunity, what that does is build on the grants that we have received to date, so that we have a vulnerability assessment, which is what we just recently were awarded and are working toward with the AmeriCorps employees. And that will then lead us to a point where we are favorably positioned for the Resiliency Officer grant. That will allow us then to continue to prepare and implement the resiliency plan through the Office of Emergency Management with support from our sustainability staff and all the departments actually that are involved with that infrastructure stuff.
Are you saying you combine the three, or you would, I still don't quite understand, hire an additional person then to manage it? Take it out of emergency?
So the funding that is possible under the Chief Resiliency opportunity would be, if we're successful in getting that, would be applied toward our resiliency program that the Office of Emergency Management is working on, maybe to allow us to have some additional staff there, which is sorely needed. And so these opportunities are building upon one another.
Okay, so you're not, it could be used for multiple persons or purposes, not just a person. Is that what you're telling me?
It could displace and supplant, so that, yes, we should be able to add where it's needed.
Thank you.
So we're applying for a grant, and the grant would then support this Chief Resiliency Officer. I knew I said that wrong. But it's an additional person to assist in this area.
Correct.
Along with the other three.
Yes.
Okay.
Wait a minute, so you're not combining them all under one?
No.
No. If we are successful and this position is funded, we could do it a number of different ways, but I think that the one that's most appealing today is to apply that money to our emergency management position today and then use that funding to add staff to that group. Does that make sense?
Well, it sounds like it's an additional position that is
Potentially,
going
yes.
to be added. You're applying for funding specifically for this position, and if the funding is secured, this is what would be created, along with along with those that are supporting currently. So it'd be, to me, it would be then 4 people. It would be 4 positions if receiving this funding.
In the Office of Emergency Management.
Right. Okay.
Councilwoman, did you have a question?
I just, when we applied for this last, I was very excited about it, even though it did not end up being successful, because we have such a small Office of Emergency Management compared to peer cities. I mean, it was really educational for me to learn some of the other cities who are smaller than we are have many multiples the number of staff that we have in our Office of Emergency Management. And I've had the opportunity to meet with the team who's preparing the AmeriCorps grant and tell them some of our priorities. So, for example, I have the pleasure of chairing the Housing Subcommittee. But when I push them on, so what are our plans, should we need to have, we've had a major power outage at our city housing. How do we evacuate folks? Who coordinates all of that? And it's very ad hoc, and to have some infrastructure to be able to deliver would make me sleep a little bit better to be able to. We did a great job responding, but I think we learned that it was very informal, and it was really a matter of pulling people out of their traditional jobs. And should we have something like a long-term power outage, there becomes a point where you can't keep pulling people out of their day jobs. So I'm glad that we are building infrastructure. It seems like we just keep having more and more of these difficult storm events, and there's a lot of other challenges ranging from cyber warfare or cybersecurity attacks. I guess warfare is the wrong word choice, but that the city has to face, and to have 2 or 3 people develop that expertise is asking a lot. So I'm glad we're building our infrastructure, because we really need to prepare for a very wide variety of challenges.
We do.
I just want to say I'm not against getting more funding and building a staff to do this. My concern is we have 3 management positions and no staff. And I think it's very important, I mean, they're working away on a plan to have a staff that would be able to implement it to educate people and go forth on it, and that's my concern.
I understand.
And we need people on the ground
Yes.
to execute the plan.
Right.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it? That's all?
Chairwoman, that's
Probably
all.
enough to keep you busy.
Okay.
No, I really appreciate bringing this forth. I think you're being very comprehensive. I know on some of the water issues that have been the topic at EMWA, and they're very supportive moving forward. And although they have a lobbyist, he has pledged to work directly with you on these as we move forward. So I don't think we take action today. I think this probably goes to the full council, but you wanted to make sure we were all briefed and supportive, and we worked out any details. So I'm taking, since there's no further comments, we're comfortable with what's being proposed, and look forward to having you come to full council so we can get you down there working.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ray,
Madam Chair.
Transportation 2050.
Yes, with the approval of Proposition 104, is some additional funding that's dedicated to the maintenance of the city's nearly 5,000 miles of public streets. And so here today to talk about the way that the Streets Department assesses the condition of the city's vast array of streets that are in our arterials, locals, and collectors. Is Ray Dovalina and his staff from the Street Transportation Department. They will do a quick presentation. I know we do have another item after this that is important for us to get to as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Ray, for the presentation.
Thank you, Mario. Madam Chair and committee members, I have with me Mark Glock, the Deputy Director over our Street Maintenance Division, and as well as Ruben Lally, our pavement engineer. And so Mark is going to start it off and go through the presentation regarding this topic.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair, subcommittee members. Thank you for allowing us to spend a little time to share on how we manage the city pavement preservation program. As Ray was saying, Mario was saying that we have just under 5,000 those centerline miles of city streets that we manage. And what that equates to is about 15,000 lane miles. And I think I've spoken with each one of you and your staff on the challenges that we have on maintaining our city streets and how we capture and prioritize our pavement program. All right, this one? Okay, got this. So, again, we have our classifications are broken down into different categories. Our major streets, arterials, collectors, and our residential streets, which add up to just under 5,000 linear miles. And what we have is we have a number of struggles, and we might have all seen our potholes that we pass from day to day, and maybe we're able to capture some revenue by fishing sources, but
Or drainage solution as well.
but they are real challenges. We receive over 20,000 calls a year on potholes alone, and it is a struggle. And our funding and our ability to address these, as the slide shows, we have a lot of holes in our system. How do we maintain our streets with the limited amount of funds that we do have? We have a lot of challenges. We have a lot of very engaged citizens that have their best eye on their street, that their street is the worst. And we have to be able to account for how we capture our data and how we're managing the program and what streets that we're doing. And how we do that is we have a high-tech pavement management van, and it uses state-of-the-art technology as far as being able to drive down the road and capture cracks in the road, rideability, surface roughness. And what we do is we categorize the city streets in an index from 0 to 100. 0 is very poor and 100 is the best. And through our analysis, we're able to capture what are the worst roads that are out there. And we're able to use this information to be able to justify what roads we're actually doing. Bloomberg, this last summer, did an article on the van, on the technology that we are using, and it's nationwide practice. So how do we manage the streets? What kind of tools do we have? What kind of services do we use? And there's a number of them. We have the hot and cold patches that we use. We have the fog seal. We have the many different types of seals that we put on the very top. Those are the surface, the very light surface treatments that we use. The FAST, which is the old chip seal, but we use the more high technology type of treatments that we have out there. And the last one, which we all know, is our mill and overlay. That's the one that everybody likes to see. That's the one that looks like a brand new road that comes out there. But that's the most expensive. So with that, we have, and this graph actually says a whole lot of how we manage our program. The red line is when we first build a road. It's brand new, very good road. And over time, the road will deteriorate, and you can see in about 25 years, if nothing is done, then we have a road that is truly failing. So what we do is we go out and we'll apply a crack seal. Years later, we'll come in, we'll put a thin coat of oil over it, and those are our microsil and sorisil that we have. And then over a number of years, when the road is really deteriorating, we'll come in with an overlay, and that will bring it back up to a very good condition. Everybody, again, likes that very, very good condition, the overlay. However, each one of those treatments through the life cycle is about $250,000. And you can imagine with the miles of streets that we have, it would take a huge budget to be able to do that. So with the passing of Prop 104, the T2050, we're able to implement more of the surface treatments. We're able to provide the crack seal. And we've had the calls that I have cracks in my road. It's a horrible thing. Well, cracks in roads, that's pretty much a standard. But we're able to go out there and put the crack seal on it to be able to protect the subgrade. Some people don't like the crack seal because it looks like, I think we're called varicose veins. And we appreciate that, but there's only so much we can do with the limited resources that we have. So after a short amount of time, we're able to come back in with either sill coat or a microsurface, which is more of a heavier rock and oil. And then again, in the time frame allotted, we'll come back in with an overlay. And you can see the benefits that we're going to be able to capture with the T2050. The total miles of overlay that we're doing is going to be able to be substantially increased with those funds, along with the microsurfacing. Some of the microsurfacing, we get the phone calls that it doesn't look as good as the overlay, but it is a good wearing course and it lasts for about 10 years. So what that means overall with the Prop 104, prior to the Prop 104, we were out in the neighborhoods. I hate to say it, we were out there about every 6 years. I mean, that was just kind of the reality.
How many,
But- I'm sorry?
how many years?
60.
6-0.
6-0, yes.
Just-
And
just check.
unrealistic, and we understand that. But again, with the passing of Prop 104, we're going to be able to go out, especially on the major arterials, that we'll be able to go out every 11 years and do a surface treatment. And that would be either crack seal, and crack seal is considered surface treatment. Then we come back in about another 11 years and do a micro seal or slurry seal, and then we'll come back in with an overlay. So we're going to be able to get out in the neighborhoods a lot more often and a lot more exposure with that.
So just to
Councilman
add,
Gates?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, just to add also, just to just clarify also, the T2050 program is going to be focused on the arterial street network that we have. The other funding that we're going to be leveraging is the current funding that we have, and that funding is going to be dedicated for the collectors and the local streets. So we have a balanced approach of how we're tackling the overall street network.
Thank you. Councilman Gates?
Yes, maybe if you could bring that slide back up. So these numbers here that we have, first of all, I want to understand how you got to these numbers. So in the report, you talk about the 2.3 billion in T2050 program funding to maintain existing city streets. So is that's the full amount for streets, and then of the 2.3 billion, 1 billion goes to projects like this that's shown on the slide?
Madam Chair and Councilman Gates, yes, there's a portion of the 2.3 overall. Keep in mind, it's a 35-year program. That's going to be a portion for the overlay program. And so it's roughly around $1 billion when we look at a 35-year program.
And that would be the overlay in addition to the microsurfacing,
Yes, sir.
the seal coat. And I'm just wondering how you came up with this, because I don't remember us ever having a discussion going into this level of why is 127 the magic number on seal coats? Why not more on overlays or less? Or maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so the plan was to be able to reduce, to be able to reduce the treatment cycle from 67 to 35 at the best. So to be able to do that, you would say you come in with an overlay in year 1, and then you don't have to overlay till year 35. Okay, so you either do nothing in between there, and then the payment will deteriorate very fast. So within year 20 or year 18 and year 35, you'll be looking at very bad roads until we can get to it. Or you do all the other treatments within the years that Mark said to maintain the street in a better condition. So for example, if you have a new street, in 5 years' time, you have only 10 cracks in there. You do 10 cracks, you have to seal only 10 cracks. But significantly increases in another 5 years to about 50 cracks, then it becomes worse. Then if you decide to crack seal those, you do a varicose vein kind of thing that you want to avoid. So we're just trying to develop the best optimal plan to maintain the street in good condition over the 35-year period. And based on the analysis of money that will be coming in, funds shifting, estimated costs and costs going up, this was the best plan for the funding that we're going to be getting.
Thank you, Ruben. And just to add, Councilman Gates, we had estimated roughly about $2.5 billion in a span of 30 to 40 years. So kind of backing, like what Ruben said, kind of backing up with the amount of money that we have that we're estimating for T2050, we kind of backed up and looked at what was the best approach in dealing with the different pavement treatments for going into the next 35 years. So that's how the numbers kind of.
Okay. And Madam Chair, a couple things. One, so again, all this is based upon the numbers. The 2.3 billion is based on the numbers that were in the ballot measure.
Yes, sir.
Right. And without completely reopening this whole debate, there is, again, just not asking whether or not we should do it, but this council has the ability to alter those numbers by its actions, right? So make those numbers higher than what was in the ballot measure. Is that correct?
Chairman Williams and Councilman Gates, the plan that was laid out in Transportation 2050 and approved by the voters was presented as a comprehensive plan with with these amounts presented based on the projections that are there. So I think we'd have to look very carefully at any changes and whether those would not be in agreement with the voters, what the voters have approved. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking, but.
That's my understanding, in semi-response to what you're saying, that the percentages that we put on there for the funds received was what would be dedicated to that purpose. However, if the funds did not come in, as we experienced before, the amount Ray received for streets would be reduced, but it would still be proportional to what was presented on the ballot.
Correct,
So
that's
the
correct.
answer is no, really.
Okay, all right, and that's so that I just want to make sure it's clear, then the position is that if we want to alter the percentages, then we need to go back to the voters?
I believe so, because it was actually the comprehensive transportation plan that was approved by the voters. And looking at that plan and the percentage that's dedicated to streets, that's what we would look to maintain in order to maintain that the integrity of what the voters approved on the ballot.
Okay. And I think that, these issues obviously are important to get very clear that we're not kind of looking at one another, make sure what the answer is before we start this whole process, because this is a huge deal for our residents, obviously, and as the Transit Committee starts to meet, the Citizens Transit Committee. And so on this, this type of information will be presented to them, I assume, and getting their input and those sorts of things?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
My question is, I'm sorry. Okay. My question is, where was citizens' input in all of this? And this is the first time I've seen this, so it's to me, it's like, okay. And so I want to know where citizens' input is on this, since they were the voters of approving this. And I know it's in the plan, but now we're getting into the details of the plan, which is not in the plan. So.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, that's right. And so I know that we have this very objective analysis of how the pavements are assessed, the condition of the pavement citywide are assessed. And it's important that we do that to make sure that as the prioritization of these streets that are going to be maintained is done, we have this index that is measured based on an objective analysis. But the Streets Transportation Department does take into account community input, and I'll let Ray explain that a little bit further.
Thank you, Mayor. Madam Chair and Councilwoman Pastor, just to kind of step back with the overall aspect of the Citizens Transportation Commission that was formed last year. We worked with that commission. They actually had a subcommittee for street transportation. So we worked with that smaller committee to talk about the overall needs that the street transportation has for the long haul. So overall, we have well over $7 billion worth of infrastructure needs and maintenance needs overall. And so we kind of worked with that group, that subgroup, and that was a public process, and working with that subgroup to identify recommendations, knowing that there's still a gap. We were looking at a number of things that we were looking for that street transportation. So we worked with that recommendation, that committee, to come up with a recommendation, as well as the overall committee, and looking at what pieces of the overall pie do they want to see as an overall program. So collectively with that process, as well as going out to the public last year, going through that public process, identifying here's some of the elements that we have that we're going to propose as a plan, and collectively we got comments through that process, the public process, and then we came up with that recommendation going forward with the ballot measure that passed. Moving forward with that, as Mark and Ruben have stated, we get a lot of calls from a lot of different areas. So collectively, we look at those calls, we analyze what we have as field data, we collect all that information, we come up with this pavement condition index rating, where we collectively look at what's the best thing to do with the funds that we have, and this new funding is going to help us elevate that more and hopefully get a greater span of areas that we're going to be tackling across the whole city. So hopefully that answered the question.
It kind of does. I mean, it does answer the question, but I guess now where I'm confused a little bit, and I'll get clarity later, is we have a whole new committee now coming on. So what is their responsibility is to oversight of the funds and determining also some of the items. So I'm now getting confused as to, we had committees, they made these decisions, now we're going to have a new committee. It's also oversight of the dollars. How does this all come into play?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, we do have this new Citizens Transportation Commission, which will be starting their work very shortly here. Hopefully their first meeting will be in November. We're working on getting that set up now. And as the ballot measure stated, this committee will be in place to provide oversight and accountability for implementation of the plan. And so the information that we're presenting to you today, along with a lot of information about the implementation of Transportation 2050, will be presented to the commission. Recommendations will be brought forth from staff seeking the input of the commission, but ultimately any decisions on the implementation are with the city council. So this committee is an advisory body to the city council as well. And so effectively that's how they will function. They will function as an advisory body to the council, as well as providing that oversight for the financials and how the money is spent throughout the whole period of 2050, which is what we call our short name of the plan. So it's really going to function that way. So all of this information, along with any information about transit initiatives, whether it be light rail or bus rapid transit, all of that's going to be vetted at the commission level, but then it will be brought forward to the city council.
Well, let me ask, Mario, based on what you just said, how I envision this happening is staff would present this to the committee. Finance would submit how much money has been collected. The committee would then review to see if there's enough money projected or collected to fund that, and if not, would make recommendations on how to adjust accordingly?
Absolutely, Madam Chair, that's correct. Generally speaking, a description of how that would work.
Thank you.
And then these recommendations would then come to us. And we would be voting on them.
Recommendations about the
Whatever's coming out of the oversight committee of lowering projects or increasing projects, those then would come to us.
It
would be
generally
recommended
through the
to us.
subcommittee and to the council, correct.
Okay. So then this items then will be the first items that go to the subcommittee, or is this just general information, this is how we're going to do it, and then we'll get later on into other details of if we can and if we can't?
The item today is meant to just be a general overview of how the process is done, how staff collects that information that's used to assess the pavement condition and develop that pavement condition index that prioritizes the streets throughout the city.
Based on the numberings that you have up here, is that projects you have already identified that fall into those categories, or is it an estimation of what you anticipate will fall in there, or have you identified actual locations where that will occur?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a 5-year program that is already identified. The roads have already been, we've gone through and categorized them. We've gone through a number of reviews with different departments and utilities to make sure that they are not coming in right behind us to dig up our brand new roads. And we have captured those roads and be able to prioritize them. So yes, we do have already a 5-year program already listed out. And this will fit into that program.
That's very good, because one of the things we've been talking about in the water department is installing all the new water lines. And the question I've asked them, have they coordinated with you so that it might not be on your list, the street they're tearing up for the water list, but I want to make sure it's coordinated, and if they're tearing up a street, that you follow and do whatever you need to do so that we don't tear it up twice.
Madam Chair, certainly, I think it's not only the water services department, but also all the other private utility companies that we're working with across the whole city, because we do have a lot of other ones. But yes, certainly, we're working with all those partners in mind.
Thank you. Councilman Gates?
Yes, Madam Chair. So just to follow up then, you said we have a 5-year program, but before 104, we had 0 crack seal coats, and microsurfacing. So did we have a plan, but we just didn't think it was going to get done, and now, or did we create a plan after 104 got passed? Can you help me understand how that works?
So in the past, Councilman Gates, in the past, so for example, if we overlay a street in a neighborhood, and then in 5 years, they would say, the street you overlaid is falling apart, do something about it. In the past, we didn't have funding to fund what to keep the street in good condition. So with this proposition about to pass, we're doing our due diligence to say, if we get the money, this is what we should do, to keep the street in the best condition. So based on that, we say, for example, some of the overlays we did right now, we get about 5 calls a week just to say, you just paved my road 6 years ago and everything is falling apart. Do something about it. I say, I'm sorry, we can't come for another 60 years. And,
Or 2 or 3.
Yeah, to be able to answer that question reasonably for people to understand or to give people comfort, we decided to develop this plan, based on the money coming. We could have done that with the old funding that we have, and that would have been scanty, But this proposition will help us be able to develop something that is reasonable.
Madam Chair, just to clearly, Councilman Gates, I mean, we did eliminate in the arterial side some of these microsurfacing, these elements, because the challenge that we have with the funding. So to answer your question, bottom line, we did eliminate some of these programs. I think some of that was based on some of the calls that we would get and how we would treat those.
Okay, so then I think I'm asking a simple question. Did we were these things, so again, it's July of 2015. We don't know if this is going to pass or not. Do we have all this crack seal and seal coats and microsurfacing written out there and we had it targeted or
Pretty much these programs in the arterial side, we did eliminate, and we were looking at how we were addressing the calls, the type of street that we have out there is what is, so to answer the question, bottom line, we did eliminate some of these treatments and trying to see how we're moving forward. And so, but there could be special cases out there that we went out and did a microseal, but it was in a special case situation.
Okay, so, but we've had a plan and it's just been kind of going along, but we haven't really been implementing that.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Okay, and now we can implement those
sir.
things.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is we did not maintain our roads because we did not have the funding to maintain the roads. And there's a plan that has been in place, but in that plan, a year went by when we didn't have funding. And so those are the top priority at this moment in the plan.
We just have a running log, Madam Chair and Councilwoman Pastor. We have a running log, and we're just kind of extending that overall log of projects that we're going to be doing. So.
Any further questions? No. Thank you. Our next item is stormwater infrastructure.
Madam Chair,
I think Ray gets to continue.
We would have Ray, but I would suggest we continue because we do want to make sure there's sufficient time to really get into the meat of the discussion of this issue.
Okay.
And although we do have a very hefty agenda coming in December, I think it's important that we do leave enough time for this discussion on this item. And it looks like, from what I understand, we might not be able to keep a quorum after 11 o'clock.
Okay, and I'm very willing to continue that. I hope you bring back great details, suggestions, recommendations, and different options, plus a history of what we've done in the past and what we need to do in the future.
We will do that. We will actually be able to bring back some more additional information to the subcommittee at that point.
You know, because stormwater infrastructures, as we mentioned earlier in this meeting, affects almost every part of the city. And I know the South and the North have made the news for it, but it doesn't mean there aren't a lot of other neighborhoods that aren't suffering just on a smaller scale and aren't newsworthy. So it is a very comprehensive, large issue that we need to address, and I want to make sure we do it in a fashion that meets all the needs and not just a couple.
Yeah, we do have 10 minutes. We can make use of that time to talk about it a little bit more before we have to cut out, or we can just delay this
Let's
item.
just postpone it
Okay.
and put it on the next
We will do
agenda. Thank you very much. Call to the public. Do we have any public? All right, don't see anybody jumping up, waving hands. Requests for future items. I have one. I am receiving emails about 3rd and 5th Avenue. And I would like to have it put on an agenda, talk about how we got there and what the options are, because many people are very excited, do not want the change. So I guess we need to know what the benefits are going to be if that would occur and how we address their concerns. Anyone else have any items?
No, that's a good one.
You got those emails too,
I have
huh?
all those emails.
Okay. With that, I think we have a list of future items already here. Hearing no others, we are adjourned.